Begin the current Daf, the Shabbos Daf Kufla begin the second line down at the top of the Yomim. The Gemara continues in the somewhat related discussion of the previous stuff regarding the tsaris of the Gullus, which we're speaking about loss of lava, if Torah is going to be forgotten or not. So our shiur continues on that theme. Our shiur is corresponded by Kalzich and Necheskel, Torah Anytime, Daf Chaim. Appreciate everyone who's joining us today. So what I'm going to speak about today's Daf is how terrible it is to have corrupt judges and a lot of the consequences because of that. Three questions that Bnei Bashkar asked Levi that he passed away, and then they ended up hearing the response from Menashe, and a lot of the answers that he gave them were more stringent because they weren't Bnei Torah. And one of them is related to that of the previous stuff regarding this discussion of oil arai. Walking outside wearing the cloth of a canopy, if that there's a problem regarding the strings that are attached to the canopy, if that's considered a problem of haitzah, of carrying those straps, because you're not really wearing them on Shabbos. And then the concept of harama, which is regarding that if someone is doing something which is not really the real intention, but he's doing it just as a trick, as some subterfuge, when is that permitted, when is that forbidden? Then the Daf concludes with regarding using various strangers on Shabbos, when that is permitted. The concepts that we're going to talk about in today's Daf is Lefishin B'nei Torah. If they're not B'nei Torah, then we're going to be more stringent because they might take certain liberties and leniencies that weren't really part of the halacha. The concept of kol hamekel ba'aretz halacha k'maisa b'chutz la'aretz. If anyone is more lenient regarding the laws of agriculture in Eretz Yisrael, then in chutz la'aretz, where there's no derais, there's no biblical law about the halacha of agriculture, so then we're going to be more lenient in that halacha. So we begin the current daf, Kuf Lamed Test, second line down at the top of the Yomid. Tanya Ulitna Bryce. Bryce says, he says, the Merisa Dur, the seed generation, Shetzaras Rabbis Boislam. That's a lot of challenges, a lot of difficulties coming on that generation. Go out and inspect by the judges of the Jewish people. Any punishment that comes to the world, it comes on because of the Jewish judges. Like it says the pasuk in Micha. Shimon Ozais. Here, please this: Rashi Beis Yaakov, the heads of the house of Yaakov, the Katzine Beis Yisrael, and the officers of the Jewish people, Hamasav and Mishpat, who they disturbed the judgment. Veskali Yashar Yakeshu, and all which is straight, they distort. Bainatzin Bedam, they build Tzion, referring to Yerushalayim, it's all with blood. Yerushalayim Ba'avla, and Yerushalayim with iniquity. Rashel B'Sheichad Yishpeitu, its heads with Sheichad, with being bribery, they judge. B'Kanel B'Mechir Yoru, and their priests, for a price, then they're going to rule. The Ahab B'Kesavik, same way, and the prophets with money, then they're going to prophesize. Where again, it's all about being bribed with money. Val Hashem Yishainu, and on Hashem they rely, the Gomer, etc. So the pasuk there concludes, Lamer to say, Halo Hashem B'Kirbeinu, when Hashem is amongst us. Like Tabale in a row, we're not going to have anything bad to ourselves. As the Gemara explains, how ironic. Rishamhin, they're so wicked, they take bribes, whatever they're doing is because of some type of a bias. But they rely, they depend their trust on the one who said and created the world. You're taking money on the side. That's the judges that are corrupt, that all the tsaras come because of that. Therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought them three different punishments. Into three sins in their hands. Because like the pasuk said, Sheichad Yishpeitu, B'Mechir Yeru, Nevel B'Kesem B'Ksema, those are the three sins. So there's three punishments. Like it says in the pasuk over there, it says, therefore because of you, Tzion, Sada Techarish, Tzion will be plowed like a field, that's one. Yerushalayim Ian Te'iyah, and Yerushalayim will be heaps, like that piles of rubble, that's the second punishment. The Harabais, the Bamisyor, and the Temple Mount will be like a platform for forests, will be like cut down trees. That's what the three punishments are because of the three sins regarding to the corrupt judges that they're going to have. Additionally, the Gemara continues, HaKadosh Baruch Hu does not rest his divine presence on the Jewish people until they get rid of the bad judges and the enforcers of the Jewish people. Shamak says the pasuk in Yeshai says, I will turn my hand on you, and I will clean your dross, which is like your dirt, like soap. I'm going to remove all your tin, which is like the impurities of the metal. I'm going to return your judges like it originally was, and your counselors as they were in the beginning, etc. Which then it says, then it will be called for you the city of righteousness, Kiryat Amana, to have Hashem's divine presence. When you get rid of all the wicked judges, then it's going to go back to as originally was. And the next pasuk after that, Amar Uli, says, Ein Yerushalayim nifte ela b'tzedakah. Yerushalayim is only redeemed with charity. Like it says in the next pasuk, it says, Tzion b'mishpat yipada, Tzion will be redeemed with justice, b'shaveh b'tzedakah, and they return these with charity. Related discussion, says the Gemara, Amar Rav Papa says, Ibatli Yihiri. If the arrogant Jews will stop being, I mean, there's certain Jews that they're arrogant with their ponytails and they dress arrogantly like the Persians or like the horse riders. When they're going to stop being, Batli Amgushi, then the Jewish people they're going to stop having the people that hate, the anti-Semites that hate the Jews, then that will stop being. So to Ibatli Dayani, this is related to what we're talking about here regarding the judges, when the wicked Jewish judges will stop distorting the judgment, then Batli will stop being on the Jewish people, Gizir Fati, which are the court officers of the non-Jews. They'll stop persecuting the Jewish people. As the Gemara explains the sources for these halachas from Psukim. If they stop being the arrogant Jews and they're going to stop being those people who are they entice and they seduce and they try to cause hatred to the Jewish people. The simply says the pasuk. It says ve'etzreif kabar tzigayich, like we quoted the pasuk before. I will clean your dross like soap. So Rashi explains, what do you see in this pasuk, this source? So that refers to the arrogant people because they make themselves feel like bigger than what they are. The word yiske ma'oid in Eiv means to be big. So sigayich not only can be read as dross, as like you're dirty, but it can be read as inflation. So when you inflate yourself, Hashem says, I'll clean like soap your inflation. Then the pasuk says, Vasir kol b'dilayich, I'm going to remove all your, we translate it as literally as tin, but b'dilayich could refer to from the word of hamavdil. For those who, then Hashem says, those who separate the haters from HaKadosh Baruch Hu with their lies, that's the Amgushi, they separate the Jewish people, that's those who I'm going to get rid of if the arrogant Jewish people stop being. And the source for the next halacha of Ibatli Dayani, if the corrupt judge of the Jewish people stop what they're doing, Batli Gezirti, then they're going to stop being the non-Jewish officers that persecute the Jews. The Chiluk says the pasuk in Zefania. It says, He says Hashem mishpatayach, Hashem will remove your judgments. Pina oivech, He'll remove your enemies. Which Rashi in Sanhedrin writes that mishpatayach is like sheftayach, like your judges. If Hashem removes your wicked judges, then Pino Eivech, that refers to the Gezirfati, that refers to the non-Jewish officers who persecute the Jewish people. Continue on this theme, Amar Reb Malai Mishum Reb Elazar Reb Shimon. He says, Maidich Siv, what does it mean in the pasuk in Yeshaya that says, Shavar Hashem Mati Risham, Hashem will break the staff of the wicked, Shevet Meishlim, the stick of the rulers. So what this refers to, and this is all on this theme, obviously, that we're talking about the corrupt judges, Shavar Shemati Risham, Hashem will break the staff of the wicked, is Ela Diyanin. That refers to the judges, Shenasu Makal Chazanim, that they're like a stick for their officers. Meaning, the ones who, the officers who work for the judges, the judges are supporting their corrupt officers. In other words, the court officers, they say to the claimant, they say, look, I'm not going to do the job for you and bring the defendant to court if you don't pay me a little bit more. And after the court judgment has been handed down, I'm not going to enforce it unless you give me some money on the side. So the judges are allowing that to go on. That's part of the corruption of the judges, that they assist, they just like a stick in the hand of their own officers. So to Shevet Meishlim, the stick of the rulers, what does this refer to? These are the Talmudic scholars in the families of the judges, meaning you have these wicked, corrupt judges that they have Talmudic scholars in their family, and the Talmudic Chacham are like sticks and like a fist, because through the Talmidei Chachamim, they appointed those judges, and they cover for them, and they protect them. And you have these powerful families that the Talmud Chacham, he says, yeah, so good, and really those judges are corrupt, and they're covering for them. That refers to Shevet Meishlim, which again, all these corruption is what brings all the tzars to the Jewish people. Now, a different interpretation, Mazutra, he says, El Talmidei Chachamim, this actually refers to the Talmudic scholars, Shemalamdim Halachas Sibur, that they teach the rulings of the public, L'Dayani Bar, to ignoramus judges, that because of the confidence of the Talmidei Chachamim, so the people let them put up these judges who were ignorant, and they're going to judge from here on. But a lot of the judgments of the cases, they don't ask the Talmidei Chachamim, and then they're distorting everything because they don't even know how to judge. That's, again, what brings the tzaras. That's what's called the Shevet Meishlim. Continuing this theme, Amar Elazar Malai Mishum Rishlakish says, Magnus, it wasn't a pasuk in Yeshaya that says, Ki kapechem negoyelu badam. because your palms have been disgusted with blood. V'etzvayseichem oven, and your fingers in sin. Sivseichem dibur sheker, your lips speak falsehood. L'shaymchem avlo tege, your tongue speaks wickedness. What does this refer to? So it's all going through this whole family of the corrupt court cases. Ki kapechem negoyel b'dam, because your palms are disgusted with blood. Elad dayanim, that refers to the judges who their palm is open to accept the bribery, and they pervert the judgment, and they take money from the claimants inappropriately, and they give it to the court case, to the opposite one, and they're like taking the soul away from the person who really was supposed to win. That's blood on their hands. So that's a famous phrase: "Is blood on your hands?" That's what this pasuk is saying, because of taking that bribery and making the other guy lose, who he's taking away his parnasa. And their fingers with sin. It refers to the court scribes, who they write these documents that are false, and that's with their fingers. That's how you write. You hold the pen with your fingers. So their lips, they speak falsehood. This refers to the lawyers, that they teach their clients how to say lies. That's with their lips, they're speaking falsehood. With your tongue, you utter falsehood. And this is actually litigants themselves. They're lying in the court case. So everyone there in the whole system is lying. That's what the pasuk is referring to. Now, another teaching from Amr Mloi, unrelated, but it's just the same Amira. It says, from the day that Yosef separated from his brothers, when he was sold down into Egypt, he never tasted the taste of wine. So it says the pasuk in Bereshit, it says, Nazir Echad, and to the head that was separated from his brothers. You see, but Nazir, although it means separated, but also it's from the word of Nazir. That he was a Nazir, he stopped drinking wine the day he was separated. He says that actually also the brothers didn't drink wine from that day. That's like it says the pasuk, when they finally were invited by Yosef to join them, it says they drank and they became intoxicated with him. The inference is obviously up until now they didn't drink wine with him. Now, but the other one says no, it's not true. Only Yosef didn't drink, because shikras who delay have. It's only like the pasuk says that they didn't become intoxicated with Yosef up until now, but shti may have, but they did drink wine up until now. Therefore, it was only Yosef that didn't drink wine. Another teaching from Rabbi says the schar and the reward that it says in Shemais, Hashem was telling Moshe Rabbeinu, don't worry about Aaron, that you're the prophet, that you're younger than him, and you can be the leader of the Jewish people, and he's not going to be. In the reward that Hashem said that Aaron's going to see you, and he's going to be happy in his heart that you're the one. Don't worry, the older brother, he's happy for you. He merited to have the Chesed Mishpat, which is one of the big day Kain Gadol on his heart, because to show about where his emotions are. Although he was older than Moshe Rabbeinu, he actually had the divine presence revealed to him in prophecy before Moshe Rabbeinu. Like a passage in Shmuel Aleph, he had a prophecy in Egypt, as it's written in Yechezkel, before Moshe Rabbeinu, and even so he wasn't jealous about his younger brother. In that reward, he got the Chesed Mishpat on his heart. Now, that concludes that discussion, which was parenthetical from the previous daf regarding corrupt judges. Now we go back to discussion of the previous daf regarding an oil, and an oil arai on Shabbos, making out on Shabbos. So the Gemara brings Shochali b'nei Bashkar, the people from Bashkar, which is the name of a place, they sent to Levi the following three questions. Kila mahu, what's the halacha about putting up a canopy on Shabbos? Second question was kishusa, regarding having hops that grow on thorn bushes. Bikarma in the vineyard. Ma, what's the halacha? Now, what's the question? Rashi explains, do we qualify the hops as a yerek, as vegetation that grows from the ground, and that would be a problem of Klein, Bekerek, in the vineyard? Or do we qualify it as a elon? It grows on tops of the thorn bushes. A tree is not a problem about Klein, Bekerek. Klein, forbidden mixture in the vineyard, is only stuff that grow from the ground like Yerukas, not a tree. So that was the question regarding what's the halacha with the hops. And the third question was Meis b'Yom Tov. What's the halacha regarding what do you do with a person who dies in Yom Tov? Sadly, this was a very common question by Corona, regarding what do you do, people over Pesach, what do you do with a dead person on Yom Tov, what's the halacha? So the Gemara tells us that at the Azal, by the time the messenger went, Nachnav Shid Levi, so Levi had already passed away. So Amr Shmuel Rab Menashe, Shmuel said to Menashe, Icha Kinas, if you're intelligent enough, Shalchu, you respond to them, there are three questions. So Shalchu, he responded to them like this. Kila regarding the canopy, says Chazarna called Tzidei Kila, we went through all the different options regarding a canopy, but limiting let's not have to, we didn't find any permissible way of putting up a canopy on Shabbos. On that they asked him, what do you mean? Why didn't you send them that there is a permissible way? Which is Kedirami by Yechezkel. we said in the previous daf that if you have, let's say, we have by the awnings, we said that if you have, even if it's hung onto a string or a rope, or if, let's say, there's a tefach of it unfolded, then you are allowed to put on the canopy on Shabbos. Why didn't you tell them that option? And that he said, no, the fisha ain't a b'nei Torah, because they're not b'nei Torah, they're not people with Torah wisdom, even just on some level, and therefore they're going to be too lenient, they're going to take liberties that are beyond, and therefore we're not going to tell, yes, you could, because yes, you could, they're going to start doing it in all types of ways. So that's why he said that there's no permissible way. Regarding the second question, Keshusa Bekarma, regarding the hops in the vineyard, he said it is irvuvia. He says that it's a forbidden mixture, meaning it's going to be climb. Meaning it's like we could treat it like a yard. On that they asked him, why do you say that? You should have sent them like Reb Tarfon says, it's in the Brisa. Kishus, regarding hops, this is a machlokes tanoim. Reb Tarfon, he says, in Klein Bekerim, he says, no, it's not a forbidden mixture of a vineyard, because he treats it like an elam. V'chamim, they say, just saying the Klein Bekerim, it is a forbidden mixture in the vineyard. Now, although we generally go like the Chum, which, yes, you're right, would say it's usher, but V'kaimalon, the Gemara tells them, brachas and perikets, that by Arla, and so it's regarding Klayim, that even though it's a mitzvah, that it's dependent on agriculture, and it's only biblical in Eretz Yisrael, not in Chutz La'aretz. So therefore we say Kalameko Ba'aretz, since only rabbinic out of Eretz Yisrael. We say whoever's lenient regarding the halacha of agriculture in Eretz Yisrael, halacha Gemaisa B'Chutz La'aretz, halacha is like B'Chutz La'aretz. So Reb Tarfon is the more lenient interpretation. He holds that it's not considered Klayim. Why are you saying that it's Klayim? These people are from Chutz La'aretz. And that here also he says Lefisha in B'nei Torah. Since they're not B'nei Torah, again they're going to take liberties more than what the halacha allows, and therefore he said, like the stringent opinion, which is that it's going to be us. However, regarding this, it's actually many different opinions on this halacha. Machras Rav would announce, Haiman de boy lemizuk reshusa v'kam. Whoever wants to plant hops in the vineyard, Lizra, he could plant because it's no problem. Which like Rav Tarfon the Chutz La'aretz. Now, but Ravam Chasida Menagid, he would actually give lashes if someone did it. And Rav Misharshia, what he would do is Yovli Prut Latinik Nachri, he would give a coin to a non-Jewish child, Bizarrely, and the non-Jewish child will plant it. As Rashi explains, he really held in Chutz La'aretz it's mutter. But as much as you could deviate, that people shouldn't learn out leniencies that are beyond what's allowed, so he would have a non-Jewish child. But really, as Taisa explains, both of them hold that it was permitted, but just since they were not B'nai Torah, their communities, therefore it shouldn't be done. So therefore, he gave lashes and he would have a non-Jewish child. But the Gemara asks, wait a second, why would he have necessarily a non-Jewish child? Why don't you give it to a Jewish child? The Jewish child also does not have the obligations halacha yet. So the Gemara, he's going to come and end up doing this when he gets older too, which takes has interesting halachic discussions regarding certain things that you're allowed to have a child do. Let's say drinking the cup. Why do you give it to a child? Don't we say that he's going to end up doing it when he gets older? So Taisa brings that depends if it's a constant thing or it's not a constant thing, but that's halachic. You're not let a child do something, even though halachically he has no obligation, because he's going to get used to it. And the habit's going to become when he even as an adult, as we know from many things that people have done when they're children, and therefore we don't give it to a Jewish child. But says why do you give it to a non-Jewish child? Give it to a non-Jewish adult. So that says people are going to come to confuse it with a Jewish person. If you see an adult doing it, you might not differentiate. A non-Jewish child, so that's something that why going to a non-Jewish child, like that's pretty obvious that it's different, and therefore it's to avoid the problem about a Jewish adult doing it. Now, regarding the third case, regarding a mace, regarding a dead person in Yom Tov, Shalchu, he sent to them mace, a dead person. Lo Askube, you're not allowed to do anything with a dead person. Lo Yodain, V'Laramoy, not Jews, not non-Jews. Lo B'Yom Tov Rishon, Lo Yom Tov Sheni, not the first day Yom Tov, and not the second day Yom Tov, which is only rabbinic. And that's is that really so? But V'Amar B'Yidbar Shilas Meravasi says, Ub Dehav the Beikinish D'Mayin. There was a story that happened in the shul in Ma'ayin. But Yom Tov was Samach LaShabbos, and Yom Tov that was near Shabbos. Now, as continued in the base, what does it mean that Yom Tov that was near Shabbos? But Lo Yadani says, I don't know. Imel Faneha. Was Yom Tov before Shabbos? Was Yom Tov on Friday? And the person died on that day on Friday. And since they couldn't involve with the dead person the next day on Shabbos, so that's why they permitted to bury the person who died on Friday Yom Tov through non-Jews. Or Imam Acharei says, I don't know if the story was that actually Yom Tov was Sunday and the person died on Shabbos. And since the dead person had already delayed from Shabbos already till Yom Tov and is already starting to decompose, so therefore that's why they permitted. But be it as an A, it was on the first day Yom Tov. Whether the first day Yom Tov was Friday, and therefore you can't wait, because if you're not going to do it today, next day Shabbos, and the next opportunity is going to be Sunday, or it was on Sunday, and it was ready, the person had already died the day before on Shabbos. Either way, Basla Kamed Rabbi Yochanan, came from Rabbi Yochanan. Bamlu said to them, you could have non-Jews be involved in the burial of that Yid who passed away. Similarly, Rava said mace. If let's say you have a dead person who already had delayed, let's say he died on Shabbos, and Sunday is Yom Tov. So the Yom Tov Rishon, the first day Yom Tov, which is biblical, Yisaska Amman, same halacha, same ruling. A non-Jew could be involved in the burial of the Jew. But Yom Tov Sheni, on the second day Yom Tov, which is rabbinic, Yisaska Yisrael, that even Jews can be involved in the burial of that person. And says the Gemara, says Rava, Philip Yom Tov Sheni Rosh Hashanah. This even the second day of Rosh Hashanah, which is different than all of the Yom Tovim, as we see in Eretz Yisrael. The only time they have 2 days Yom Tov is Rosh Hashanah and not of any other Yom Tov. Still, you're allowed to do it on the second day of Rosh Hashanah. Now, in contrast to regarding an egg that was born, that Rosh Hashanah that's different than all of the Yom Tovim, because Rosh Hashanah, the second day is more stringent, and if an egg was born on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, it's going to be forbidden on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, as we'll explain in different Masechta and by Masechta Be'ah. But be that as it may, it's permitted on Rosh Hashanah regarding the dead person. So one thing you see is how you're telling them that you're not allowed to bury a dead person that dies on Yom Tov or before Yom Tov, not first day, not second day, not Jew, not non-Jew. What do we mean? We see first day you could be do with a non-Jew, and second day you could do with a Jew. So the Gemara here also, since it's not B'nai Torah, he didn't want to start opening up a whole can of worms because they're not going to know what to differentiate. They're going to take liberties that weren't the case, and therefore he says, you know what, you can't do it. And yes, although there's the person here is dead, that's dead, but we don't allow that because of the circumstances going to happen beyond that. Now, regarding the halacha of the canopy, the Gemara brings that Amr Bavin, Bar Rav Huna, Amr Rav Cham Bar Gurya, says Mesatev Adam Mekila, a person can wrap themselves in a canopy. Interesting, meaning a canopy is obviously meant to go ahead and cover some walls, but the canopy is really like a sheet, and the person is wearing the sheet. And now you have the strings that are hanging from the canopy because those strings are meant to, let's say, wrap around the poles. And you can go out into the street on Shabbos. You have to be concerned. In other words, you don't say, what do you mean? Those straps, those strings are not meant for wearing. It's a load. It's a carrying something. What's called a masai, and because it's only meant to wrap it around for the oil. And that says the Gemara, no, it's not a problem. You're allowed to wear the cloak as your coat. Like let's say it's raining, and you put a canopy over your head, and you're walking wearing it like a talus. It's not a problem that you have these straps that are hanging from that. It's not considered a problem of carrying. It says, why? Why is it any different than Rav Huna? The Amr Rav Huna, Rav says, someone goes over to talus. With the tzitzis are not halachically sound. Meaning, let's say you have 3 corners tzitzis, and the 4th corner doesn't have tzitzis. Chaya chatis, you're liable for karma chatis. Why? Rashi explains. If you didn't have any tzitzis at all, you wouldn't be chay because that's the normal way of wearing it. The problem is, wearing tzitzis that is not mekayim the mitzvah, those strings, if you think about it, it's not a normal thing to have strings hanging from your garment. If you're fulfilling the mitzvah tzitzis, then fine. But if it's not kel chasa, so then the tzitzis are a masay. It's carrying an unnecessary load on Shabbos because you're not fulfilling the mitzvah, so you don't need it. And it's not part of the actual garment to say that it's like the garment itself. So why is it any different than we're saying by the canopy that you're wearing it? Those straps, why is that not considered carrying also? It's not an integral part of the garment. Says the Gemara, there is a difference. Tzitzis agabe talas chashivi. The tzitzis regarding the talas is significant. Rashi says because they made a tchelis or the chashiv. Tesha brings from Rabbi Chananel that because they're significant in his eyes, because he plans on putting a 4th pair of tzitzis. But be that as it may, it's chashiv, it's not going to be nullified to the talis. It has its own significance, and therefore it's a load, it's a masay. But hani, these straps, like chashivi, they're not significant. Ubatli, and they're nullified to the canopy, and therefore it's not significant in its own right. And they're going to be put. And Tosha brings halach l'maisa. We have this all the time. Tosha brings that by their belt you have these loops, you have these straps, you have these other things that are hanging from the garment, and it's batal. It's not significant, and there is no problem about carrying those things on Shabbos to the garment that you're wearing. What do you mean it's unnecessary load? No, it's batal to the garment. Therefore, you could have these straps, these loops on Shabbos on your garment, and it's not considered that of carrying. Continuing with regarding the halacha of the Mishnah, which we spoke about hanging the strainer, which was a machlekes regarding Yom Tov and how it applies to Shabbos. So Amar Rabbi Bar Huna, he says, according to the Rabban in the Mishnah, that they said that you're not allowed to suspend a strainer on Yom Tov, and we explained the reason was not because of oil. We said because of the dechel, it's like a weekday type of activity. So the following halacha, but they say since it's only rabbinic, it's only because of the dechel, it's like a weekday activity. But so they were maram adam ala mashameres beyond. The person could make a trick. He could use subterfuge. He could, regarding putting up a strainer on Yom Tov, he could suspend it litlas barumayim for the purposes of pomegranates. Now, if you want to just have a strainer, so not to use as a strainer, but to put pomegranates, so you just want a receptacle. So that's not a weekly type of activity. So you could put it up to put up a strain, to put the pomegranates in it, and then Matela b'shamarim. And then you could go ahead, once it's up already, then you could go ahead and sift the shamarim, the sediments, because once it's hanging, we said according to Rabban, they agree that you could put into the tluya that's already pre-existing to put in and strain on Yom Tov. You just can't suspend it because of the nechel. But here, you're allowed to put this up because of putting in the pomegranates. Once it's up, then you can go ahead and strain the wine. Which Amar Vashi says, but who did tell about your mind? This is only if, yes, you first put up pomegranates. So it's obvious that originally it was not meant for straining, because if you don't do the pomegranates first, then it looks like that you made it that you made a strainer, which you're not allowed to. Says Gemara, why? Why is it different than what we learned in the following brisa? The brisa says, Matilin sheikh b'mayit, that you're allowed to go ahead and brew beer on chol shamayit, l'tzarech hamayit, if it's for a Yom Tov purpose. Shalom tzarech hamayit, if it's not for Yom Tov purpose, then also you'll not just be brewing beer. Echad sheikh tomorrow, this applies to date beer. Echad sheikh sa'im, this applies to barley beer. Now, avat b'sheish yashin, even though you have old beer, ma'arim b'sheish machadash, you could make a trick and you could drink from the new beer. Meaning to say, you don't need the beer for Yom Tov. It's not really Yom Tov purposes, but you could, you could go ahead and make like you don't have it, say because you want to have new beer. Now, obviously, even though it's not indicative, there's no obvious proof, you're allowed to go ahead and do harama because people don't know that you're doing it, that you don't have beer. I mean, in other words, there's no proof that it's permitted, and still you see that you're allowed to. So why are you saying that by the pomegranate that you have to have the pomegranate there? Why? Don't you see? Why is it any different in this case by the beer? Says the Gemara, no, hasam lemucha milsa. There, it's not obvious that you're doing something forbidden, because whoever sees you making beer says, oh, he's probably making because for Yom Tov. Not everyone knows that he has the old beer. Hacha mucha milsa. Here, to the contrary, if you're putting up the strainer and the first thing you're doing is putting the wine through it for the sediments, then it's obvious that it is forbidden, because if there's no pomegranates to just place over there to keep it somewhere to store it, when you're putting the sediment, it's obvious that that's what you did it for. When you're just doing the beer, it's not obvious doing something wrong. People would assume that you are actually, that you don't have beer. So that's why that's a different than that, because somebody may brew on chalma with the excuse that he wants to drink on Yom Tov, and that's le'mucha milsa. Here it is mucha milsa, there you have to have the pomegranates. A similar type of halacha, a third case of harama that's permitted. Amalei Rabban Rabashi, the rabbi said to Rabashi, Chazimar Hai Tzomer Rabban, take a look at this Talmudic scholar. Rav Huna Reb Chilvin Shemei, and some say Rav Huna Reb Chilvin Shemei. He says, look at him. You know what he does? The shakal bar the tumah. He takes a clove of garlic, umanach bebarz the dun, and he puts it in the spigot of the barrel. Meaning there's a hole in the barrel, which where the wine comes out from. So on Shabbos he wants to close it up, and that's a problem because that's masak and mana. That's plugging up a hole. That's fixing the barrel. But he makes a trick initially. V'aman, he says, I put the clove of garlic here in the spigot is latsnui. I just need a place where to put the clove of garlic. That's what kamachab. That's what's my intention. So I just need a place to put it. Right? Saying he's fixing the vessel, but he's saying I didn't intend to. I just wanted to put the clove of garlic. So there was a great hole where to put it. So to another thing that he does is he goes, he takes a nap on a large boat, which is meant like a ferry to go over the water, which was owned by a non-Jewish proprietor, and he knows that the non-Jew is going to take him 20 minutes later when he's in the middle of his nap to the other side of the river. He goes to the other side of the river. And he goes and he checks and he safeguards his fruits of his vineyard. So it comes that the non-Jew took him over the water on Shabbos. He says, I don't know, I just wanted to take a nap. And then he wakes up and he's on the other side of the river. So they said, look at him, look what he's doing. So Amalahu, he said to them, Harama Kamrad, what are you saying regarding making a trick? Oh, that's not a problem. Harama b'drabani. This is harama regarding rabbinic law. And the Talmudic scholar is not going to come to do it initially in the wrong way. In other words, this harama, this trick, was not regarding biblical violation. They're regarding rabbinic violations. Regarding that of going over the water, it's not even clear exactly what it is. We can now let it swim in water. You also now, that's which is rabbinic. You also now let it do an obd nechayil. So even if he would do something without that harama, it would be a rabbinic violation. So therefore, since he's a Talmudic scholar, we're not so stringent because he's not going to come to do it initially without the harama to violate on the Isser itself. So therefore, it's not a problem to avoid the Isser Rabbanan. Tzur Rabbanan is permitted to do that. Here with the halach in the next Mishnah that although we had said that you're not allowed to put, according to Rabbanan, the wine into the strainer on Shabbos, but there are certain permitted ways to do some type of a straining on Shabbos. Says the Mishnah, Neis Nimai, you're allowed to put water on Shabbos, al gabi hashemarim, on the dregs, which is those are the sediments themselves, which were already in the strainer from before Shabbos. You're allowed to put water on them, b'shul sheyitzaylu, so that they should be liquidy, and that the wine that's in those dregs should drip out. That you're allowed to do on Shabbos. So to mesanes hayayin, you could also strain the wine, because there's some like what's called kamachim. It's like this floury. Some wines you see it has like this white pieces inside of it. But the thing is, and this is the important halacha of many of these teachings we can learn in this Mishnah and the Gemara on it, is that it's really drinkable even with that there. And that's the halacha with filters and all these different things. That the reason why you're allowed to use it, why isn't it a problem about butter? Because not really, because since it would be drinkable, it is, people do drink it even without, so therefore it's not going to be a problem about that of straining. So you could strain it, but it has to be in a not the normal way. It has to be besudarin, with it could be with a cloth, with a kvifa mitzvahs, or with the kvifa is a basket. The mitzvahs is not Egyptian. Mitzvahs is from the word tsuri dekel. A basket made out of palm twigs. You could use that to strain the wine. So too, that v'neisen beib and mesaner shel chardal, we'll discuss this on the next Daf. You could put an egg in a strainer of mustard, where you generally strain the mustard in over there, which it keeps the refuse on the top. So to the egg, you're putting it through the mustard strainer, where the yellow of the egg, that gets strained through the strainer and it goes into the mustard to give it a color, whereas the white of the egg, which is a little bit more thick consistency, that stays on the top. You could put the egg through the mustard strainer. And also anumlan b'Shabbos. You can make anumlan, which will explain the Gemara what that is. You can make out of Shabbos. He says, well, it depends. It says b'Shabbos you can make b'kais, only a cup worth, but you can't do more than that because that's an unnecessary tircha. B'Yom Tov you could do b'login, which is larger than the cup, it's smaller than the barrel. B'Mayin and Chalash Hamayid you could do b'Chavos in the barrel. But so the Gemara says it depends on how many guests. That would depend on how much quantity you can make. Now we continue with the halacha related to the halacha of the Mishnah. Amr Ziri, he says, Naisen adam yain tzal u'mayin tzal. The person could put clear wine and clear water into a strainer on Shabbos. She doesn't have to be concerned. Again, this was the halacha that we mentioned, similar to the halacha of the Mishnah, that you could put water on top of the dregs so that they should be clear, because you're not really doing anything. It's just it's drinkable even without that. Now, but if it's murky wine, then that's going to be butter, because that's going to be really straining the wine and clearing it out, which makes it the Gemara from the following brisa. He says, a person could go ahead and mix chavish yain, a barrel of wine, yain ishmereha, the wine and its sediments, you could put it into a strainer on Shabbos. You don't have to be concerned. So wait a second, we're talking about obviously murky wine because it has sediments, and you tell me you could put it into a strainer on Shabbos. Didn't you tell me it has to be only clear wine? So Tigim Ziri interpreted when you're allowed to do it. We're talking about between the wine presses, which is that between the wine presses, all the wine that's on the market is murky wine, and everyone drinks it like that with the sediments. So therefore, there's no tikkun over here, because anyways, people would drink it. So it's at that time in the context, people drink it, and therefore it's not really considered straining for them, and therefore then you're allowed to do it. But for other times, which is not between the wine presses, then people like drinking clean wine, and then that would be considered the problem about butter, and then it would be forbidden. The next halacha of the Mishnah we said, you could filter the wine with a cloth. So Amr Shim Bachi says, as long as you don't make a depression from the cloth by the opening of the vessel, because Rashi brings two interpretations. You're allowed to have it on the top, but it cannot be a depression. It cannot be pushed down a little bit to make like some type of a pit, either because it's Uvd Nechal, looks like how you normally do it during the weekday. Again, Uvd Nechal is a rabbinic isra that for many different things are forbidden for that reason. Or Rashi said, but the concern is that we might come to schita, because since it's pushed down, so that's where it seems like then we're going to be concerned about squeezing it out, because it starts sagging down. But if it's on the top, then it's going to be permitted. Next halacha we said in the Mishnah was a kvifa mitzvahs, or you could go ahead and strain it, filter it with a basket that made out of palm twigs. So Amar Chia Bar Ashim Arav, he says, but as long as you don't have that basket a height mikarke'asel shakli from the bottom of the vessel beneath it, which it's going into, a height of a tefach which that's the measurement of the oil. So this basket that you're putting inside the kli has to be, it can't be more than the tefach above, because then you're making an oil on Shabbos. Later, Amar Rabbi says, "Hai paronka," which is a cloth, a garment that they would stretch out on the barrels of wine to cover it. A palgi de kuba, on halfway of the barrel, that's shari. You're allowed to cover it halfway because that's not making oil. But a kuli kuba, but on the whole barrel, that would be asa, that would be forbidden. Again, like we're saying, because you're making an oil. Similarly, a related halacha, the Gemara concludes with Amar Papa, the second to the last halacha. A person should not push in different chips of wood in the opening of the small earthenware vessel, which they would pour the wine from the barrel. Don't put into the lid, into the mouth of that container, piece of twig and straw very tightly. Because that looks like a strainer. Like Rashi says, really, there's no greater strainer than that. If by the opening of the vessel, you basically clog it, and only liquid can come out, that's going to function as a strainer, and therefore that's forbidden to be done on Shabbos. Additionally, the Gemara continued, this is the last halacha, the Bei Rav Papa, in the house of Rav Papa, shafu, they would pour slowly, shichra, beer. So whenever you say shafu, it means that it's done very slowly. So if you pour very slowly, the reason why they would do it is because the beer has all these pieces that are there, so they wanted it to stay on the bottom, so they would pour the beer miman lamana very slowly, so that when you pour, many times you have pieces and you want to pour it slowly so that whatever's from the sediment stay there, they would pour very slowly from cup to cup. On that, there's actually a important halacha of Shabbos, but there's the different small droplets that stay there at the end. When you're pouring those last droplets, you're doing butter because you're taking from the psilas, you're taking the eichel, you're taking that mashka. So how do they do that? And that says the Gemara, and the tzitz Rav Papa, the droplets for the house of Rav Papa, lichashivi is not significant. Meaning, Rav Papa was a store owner. He had a brewery of beer, as the Gemara says about Metzia and Pesachim. So they weren't so concerned. They had their own brewery, and they're definitely not concerned about a little bit beer, a little bit droplets on the bottom. So actually, when they got to the bottom where the droplets were, they would throw out that little beer with those pieces. So there was no problem about butter, because when you're pouring the beer on the top, so that's obvious that it's different than the piece on the bottom. That's not butter. Butter is only when you get to the bottom and you have that little bit of liquid with the pieces. Pouring that out would be a problem about butter. But they didn't do that, because when you got already close to the bottom, they just threw it out because they had enough beer to go around for everyone, and therefore that was not a problem about butter. But it would be a problem if when you're trying to pour something, you're going all the way to the end. One, halachically not supposed to do that, because that would be a problem about butter. Something we spoke about in today's Daf and Shabbos Daf Kuf Lamed was, we continued related to the previous Daf somewhat. We spoke about the different sorrows that happen through the wicked judges, where there's 3 punishments correlating to the 3 sins, regarding basically taking bribery when you're coming to rule, and 3 questions that they sent to Levi, which he had passed away. From Menashe responded, he was stringent because he says they were not b'nei Torah, and therefore they're going to take certain liberties. So the Rav, he says, no, matunish. Why? Because, they're going to take it too far. Also, we said that there's no issur of hitzah on Shabbos by the straps, which are not significant. So you're allowed to wear your jacket, your hoodie, whatever it is. You got things hanging. They're not significant. They're bottled to the garment you're allowed to wear. In contrast to tzitzis, which we said that those are chashav, and therefore they're not going to be bottled. We also said a person can make a trick. We said 4 different cases of harama. We said that you could hang the mishameres, which we said you're not allowed to do according to Rabbanan Yom Tov. But yeah, I'm doing it just for dates. I just need a receptacle where to put the dates, and then you could put in and strain because you're allowed to strain the wine on Yom Tov. But the Gemara just points out, but you have to actually do that. You have to actually put the dates in first, because or else it's going to be obvious that you're doing it to strain, which then that would be forbidden. We also said that haram is permitted for a Talmid Chacham by Yisud Rabbanim, because he's not going to come to do it in the forbidden way, and even if he would, it would only be rabbinic. So for a Talmid Chacham, we're makel. The next Mishnah, we spoke about many different halachas. One was that you let to put water on the shamarim so that it could just let the liquid come out. We said that you're allowed to strain the wine with a cloth, but again, without making an indentation, either because of the chal, because it might come to schita. We said you could put an egg in a strainer of mustard, and there's no problem, as we'll explain on the next daf. You're allowed to make a numlan on Shabbos, we'll explain what that actually is, but the machlek is exactly how much, depending on what the circumstances are. We said that cloudy wine is forbidden to put in the mishameres because that's straining, unless it's ben agitos, which anyways everyone drinks wine like that, so it's not really considered straining. Like we said, the filters that people use for the water is not a problem. There's many different discussions regarding, but again, people drink it anyway, so it's not a problem about butter. A person should not put in these chips into the opening of the thing that you pour from, because that's going to function as a mishameres, as a strainer. And we said that you shouldn't pour all the way up until the small little droplets by beer or any type of a beverage, because then it's together with the psilus in the bottom, and that would be considered as butter. And therefore, the house of Rav Papa, they had enough beer, they didn't wait till the bottom, and therefore that wasn't a violation of butter. Thank you any time for hosting us.